Hi everyone, my name is Ramana Reddy. I am a tax lawyer from Hyderabad. Every now and then, the government provides some kind of exemption to a class of people or a group of people, uh, on for for whatever reason. And sometimes in these exemptions, that are provided through a notification, uh, there are ambiguities, and generally, so how do we interpret these ambiguities? What do we do when there is language in the notification that could go both ways? So there's language in the notification that could be interpreted in favor of the taxpayer, and there's language there that could also be interpreted in favor of the department. So in these kind of situations, what do we do? Uh, so that will be our topic for today. The Supreme Court, in a recent case, has done a wonderful job of interpreting how to understand these exemption notifications. These exemption notifications, they're generally given. So to take a classic example, would be the Sabka Vikas legacy scheme that was given, by the government for if you have any dues under or if you have any litigation under the service tax regime or the central excise regime, you could have applied for the exemption or the amnesty scheme. And that's a classic example of the government trying to waive at least a portion of the tax or penalty that it is asking from you. Now, there was a recent case from Kerala that went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had an opportunity to look at the exemption notification, and there was an ambiguity there, and it was interesting how they interpreted the ambiguity. So, in the case, what happened was, so this case went up from the Kerala High Court to the Supreme Court, and in this case, there was so in Kerala, apparently there is a tax on buildings. So if you have a building and you have the plinth area is greater than whatever X or Y amount, then that building attracts tax, and you need to pay tax for that for constructing and living in that building. But there was a specific exemption that was provided in the Act. And the exemption was that if the building was used principally for religious or charitable purposes, then the building would be exempt from the Kerala Buildings Property Tax. Uh, the Kerala Building Tax Act. Now, so in this particular case, what happened was there was a convent, a Christian convent where religious activities would be undertaken. And adjacent to that building was another building where all the sisters would stay, for religious training and all that, but they just need a place to stay instead of accommodating to and fro. So there's a building with the convent, and there's another building that's next to it that is being used for a residential purpose. Now, the question was, is the residential building in which they stay, is the residential building being used principally for principally for a religious or a charitable purpose? Now, this could be argued both ways, right? Because look, on the one hand, you could argue the sisters need a place to stay instead of traveling to and fro. So it is being used principally for religious and charitable purposes. On the other hand, the government could argue when we say principally for, then we only mean that if it is used only for charitable purpose. So for example, the convent building itself, that building we will exempt from tax. But the building that is being used for a residential purpose, that we're not going to exempt from tax because that is not being used principally for a religious or a charitable purpose. Now, the Kerala High Court in most cases ruled in favor of the sisters or of the convent. I think in one case they ruled against them, but all these appeals went up to the Supreme Court. And so, on similar lines, so the question is, how do you interpret, use principally for? And this is an exemption again that is being provided to, for religious and charitable purposes. Now, in 2018, there was a case called Dilip Kumar, in which there were the five judges of the Supreme Court sat together, and they held that exemption. So any exemption that is provided to any person under a tax statute is to be strictly interpreted. So what does that mean? So what that means is, look, when we levy tax or when the government levy tax, when the government levies a tax, it levies tax on everybody. So let's say there are 100 people on which the government wants to levy a tax. Now, out of the 100 people, it exempts, say, 10 people. And it says, okay, if you fall under, the group of 10 people or for a religious charitable purpose, then we're going to exempt. So what happens is the burden of, to pay tax of these 10 people also shifts to the 90 other people, because they have to now foot the bill for whatever revenue targets, for whatever revenue goals that the government has. So, so the thinking is that if you provide an exemption, then you have to limit that exemption. You cannot read the exemption broadly so as to, uh, so as to put a higher, or so as to put a higher duty on the remaining 90 people who are in the net. Because if you understand the exemption broadly, and you now go from 10 to 20 people, now the revenue goals that the government has to be fulfilled by 80 people instead of 90 people. So so, so, so the thinking was that whenever you read an exemption, you need to read that exemption in a way that uh, it is strictly, you read language strictly so as to limit it to only a select group of people. Now, this was the law in force, although that was a five-judge bench, and the case I'm talking about now from Kerala is two-judge bench. So now, in this particular case, what the Supreme Court did was, it said, look, we there is a difference. So there are two types of exemption notifications. You cannot simply put a blanket rule on all exemption notifications. So the first type of a notification is a general exemption. So when you say, out of there's a milk product, and out of that I am going to exempt badam milk for whatever reason. And so that is a general exemption. On the other hand, there are specific exemptions. So a classic example would be, the government of a particular state wants to promote industries, although with the current tax climate, that may not be one of the government's goal. But let's take as a hypothetical. Let's say the government wants to encourage industry, and it says, okay, look, if you start an industry in these ABC districts which are backward, and you generate employment, in that case we are going to exempt you from a certain amount of tax. So there are two categories, right? One is like a general exemption, and I'm just going to exempt flavored milk or badam milk. And the other one is, there's an exemption and there's a specific reason behind the exemption as to why the exemption should be there. So the Supreme Court said was, look, in a case where there is a specific purpose behind the exemption, then you must read that exemption broadly. Because when the government is trying to promote something, or when there's a beneficial thing that is given out by the government for a particular purpose, then that particular purpose should be fulfilled. I mean, if you're going to throw people out of the exemption simply because exemption should be read strictly, then you're not fulfilling the purpose of the government. So, in case where there's a specific purpose behind the exemption, you read that exemption broadly. Whereas in an exemption, which is general in nature, in that case, you don't read it broadly, you read it narrowly, you read it strictly. Uh, and this was the distinction that the Supreme Court made. And so coming back to the facts of our case now, the Supreme Court held that the exemption that is given to sisters for buildings that are being used principally for religious and charitable purposes, they said that this is a specific exemption, that is a benefit that is being given to to religious activities. So therefore, you read the exemption broadly. My thoughts are that it is not a clear-cut case as to when an exemption is given with a specific purpose in mind and when an exemption is not given with a specific purpose in mind. This is where, I mean, as a lawyer, your skills of advocacy come into play. It's because you want to always bring your client within the ambit of a specific exemption. I mean, with an exemption given with a specific purpose. Uh, the name of the case, just give me 1 second, I'll let you know. The name of the case was Government of Kerala versus Mother Superior Adoration Convent. So basically, the law from Dilip Kumar saying all exemptions should be read strictly was doubted, and they brought back the distinction between two types of exemptions. So whenever you're reading an exemption and you come across an ambiguity, try to think about both these categories and under which category that would go into. I hope the video was helpful. If you have any questions, comments, love mail or hate mail, please feel free to put them in the comments section. Although I may not respond to each one of them, I definitely read each one of them. So thank you for watching.